Biology 160, Introduction to Anatomy Physiology, talking about the digestive system. To finish up this section on the digestion system, I want to talk a little bit about the liver, which is a very important major organ that we haven't seen yet and haven't talked too much about yet in this semester. And then also want to talk a little bit about cholesterol, and then a few developmental aspects, and then we'll be done with this section here. So the liver, it plays a number of roles in digestion. A few we've already talked about, a few I want to mention. First one we have already talked a lot about is manufactures bile, which is emulsification of fats. And that's a major function of the liver. But also, our liver is a big detox organ. So it's where all the harmful substances in our body can go, and then our body can work to try to get rid of those, to neutralize those poisons and remove them from the body. So detoxifies drugs and alcohol as well. So if you're a big alcohol drinker, you're putting your liver to work. And if you drink too much alcohol, it can eventually lead to liver failure, which would be really bad. Also, hormones are broken down in the liver. And then the liver also functions in producing a lot of things that we need in our body. So blood proteins, albumin, clotting proteins, those are all produced by the cells of the liver. And then also cholesterol. And you've heard a lot about cholesterol, I'm sure, in nutrition or diet or different places like that. And I'll mention a little bit more about cholesterol and what that is, and its role in our body. And then also metabolism is central to the liver. In the circulatory system, we talked about the hepatic portal system, and this is a system that, as things are absorbed from the digestive organs, they move into the blood. The first place they go is to the liver, and the liver takes out everything out of the blood, and then it can use that to make other things. So, for example, the proteins that are broken down and digested in the small intestine, they end up in the liver. And then the liver can use them to build blood proteins or send them to other places in the body. The carbohydrates, the glucose, the liver helps to maintain the amount of glucose in the blood. If there's too much glucose flowing around in the blood, the liver can take it and produce glucagon, which can help store that glucose until later needs. So it plays a very important part. And if you don't have your liver, you're not going to be able to survive. It's essential. It's an essential organ. The nice thing about the liver, though, is that unlike a lot of our other organs, it can regenerate. So if part of it is damaged, it can regenerate. If you just have part of a liver, or for example, a liver transplant, you don't have to get a whole new liver. They can give you part of a liver, and then the rest of it can degenerate. So that's a really good thing in that case there. Here's a slide that shows the liver's function in maintaining the homeostasis of glucose in the body, in the blood. So, for example, if the amount of glucose in the blood becomes too much, if it raises too much, then we have something called glucogenesis. And what happens here is glucose is converted to glycogen. Well, I think a second ago I called it glucagon, which is the hormone that stimulates this. But anyway, so glucose is built into glycogen, which is a storage molecule that can be stored in our liver. And then that'll bring the glucose levels back down to where they need to be. This glycogen is then stored, and we can use it at a later time. So, for example, if our blood sugar starts to fall, then this is going to trigger the breakdown of glycogen back into glucose that can be released in the blood to move that back up to our homeostatic balance. We call this glycogenolysis. And then furthermore, if there's not enough glycogen to break down the glucose, our liver can stimulate the breakdown of amino acids and fats and convert them to glucose. And that will bring our homeostatic level back to where it needs to be. And this can lead to other things, but This is kind of the last resort, but we call this gluconeogenesis. So, for example, someone that's diabetic and can't absorb in the end, though, the liver plays an important part in maintaining the level of glucose inside the blood. The liver will also take fats and fatty acids, and the liver will use fats and fatty acids for its metabolism. It's not going to take the glucose. It leaves the glucose for the other cells of the body. It mainly burns fat. And so it'll take some of those, use them for energy. Rest, it'll break down and release them back in the blood. So the liver essentially gets the first crack at everything that's coming out of the digestive system. It can pull out everything that it needs, and it can use that to build other things and send them into blood. Everything it doesn't need, it can just send back in the blood, and it'll be available to other cells. That's a little bit about the liver. Let me mention just a little bit about cholesterol as well. So cholesterol is a lipid. It's a type of fatty acid. Sorry, not a fatty acid. It is a type of lipid, so it fits into kind of this fat category. But it's not broken down to produce energy or ATP inside the body. But it does have some very important functions. Steroid hormones, such as testosterone, the androgens, and estrogen, progesterone, they are derivatives of cholesterol. In other words, our body takes cholesterol and modifies it in order to produce the steroid hormones. Also, vitamin D, which is a lipid-based vitamin, comes from cholesterol. So just that right there tells you how important cholesterol is. Also, our plasma membranes, which are around every cell. So every cell in our body has a plasma membrane around it. It's the outer surface of all of our cells. And all of those plasma membranes have cholesterol in it. So cholesterol is huge. Cholesterol gets a really bad rap in the media, in nutrition and things like that. But if you didn't have any cholesterol, you wouldn't be able to survive. But at the same time, it's not necessarily a bad thing that gets a bad rap, because our body can produce almost all of the cholesterol that we need. What this means is that you don't really need to get any cholesterol in your diet. And so that's where the media really hits, is this getting cholesterol in your diet. They really discourage getting cholesterol in your diet. And that's okay, though, because you can make all the cholesterol you need. But it is a very essential molecule. You've probably heard of this idea of LDL, good cholesterol, and bad cholesterol. Good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, it's all cholesterol. Cholesterol is cholesterol, but depending on how it's packaged and sent around the body, it has a different name. So it's transported as lipoproteins, which are lipid and proteins bound together. And so we call some of these LDLs, and these are called low-density lipoproteins. And then we have high-density lipoproteins called HDLs. This is what we consider the good cholesterol, and this we consider the bad cholesterol. And the reason is that the low density seems to be able to get stuck inside our arteries and lead to clogging of the arteries, and can lead to clots and strokes and things like that. And so so HDL is what you want your cholesterol to be transported at. Part of this deals with diet. Part of this seems to deal with genetics as well, depending on how people are going to send this cholesterol out into the different body cells. So that's a little bit about cholesterol. Let's now look a little bit about developmental aspects of this system, and then we'll move, and then that'll be the end. So, alimentary canal. This is one of the first things that forms as you are developing as a fetus and then into an embryo. So, in the 5th week, you've got one continuous tube from one end of the body to the other, and you're starting to produce digestive glands. But it doesn't really have a digestive function because we receive all of our nutrients from our mother through the placenta. Once we're born, though, we begin breastfeeding, or feeding on milk, and but our digestive system still isn't completely formed. So we have to be fed often, so we're not really able to store a lot of food, and peristalsis doesn't work very well, and so a lot of vomiting and things like that, and digestion doesn't happen perfectly at that point either. Newborns do have some reflexes, And you've seen this, I'm sure, if you've ever seen a newborn baby. They have what's called a rooting reflex. And this is a reflex that they have in order to try to find their food sources. So they know they need food, and so they root around in order to find that. And then also a sucking reflex. This is something that all babies have. They're able to suck, and they know how to suck and to swallow immediately. And so that's part of this digestive system as well. And then their teeth start forming around 6 months, but it may be later, maybe a little bit earlier, but that's kind of the average. And then you continue to get teeth. First you get those deciduous teeth or milk teeth, and then later in come your permanent teeth. So that's a little bit about early development. We've talked about some of the problems that can happen with the digestive system. You can have inflammation of the gastrointestinal tract. You can have appendicitis, which we mentioned. Your metabolism decreases with old age, which is interesting. And then also you can get ulcers, or you can also get gallstones, other gallbladder problems that we talked about as well. And then also, just as you get old, your body's not going to produce as many digestive juices. Peristalsis isn't going to work as well. Cancer, you can get cancer of the colon, the stomach cancer. I mean, there's a lot of different cancers that can develop as well. But all in all, this system works well, and it does its job that it needs to do.